This is episode number 423 of WPwatercooler, converting your site to FSE.
Oh yeah, convert over.
I'm Jason Tucker. You find me at Jason Tucker on Twitter.
He's Jason Tucker on Twitter.
I'm Steve Zehngut. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup occasionally.
Not really on Twitter, but hey, I'm Say Reed. I'm on Twitter a lot. Too much, probably. Say Reed Media, come talk to me.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mole Mike, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast.
Speaking of podcasts, go over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify to check us out. We'd really appreciate that. And if you're just watching us as a YouTube channel, leave us a comment and hit the little thumbs up or something. We would love to, kind of get you involved in what we got going on over here.
I like what you guys do in the intro there. It's a little segue, like Cosper says podcast, and Jason says, speaking of podcasts, it works. It's I just picked up on it.
You're so natural. Steve hasn't been here in a while. He's like, look at you guys. And
it's like Steve to go to a coffee shop to actually listen to the show.
You have my full attention.
Before we get too inside baseball distracted, which I'm sure we will later, let's meet our guest.
Yeah, Nick.
Hi,
we have Nick Diego on today. Hey, Nick. How's it going today?
Going great.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I've worked with WordPress for probably like 10 years now, but mainly as a hobby for a long time. I was in the hospitality business for about a decade.
Hospitality.
Yeah, it was fun with COVID. So I left that in June of last year and did my own plugin development business. And then Brian Gardner, we all know Brian Gardner. He sucked me into working on Frost.
I mean, I do, but do we all?
And then he sucked me into Frost, and then started working with WP Engine. So now I'm a developer advocate at WP Engine.
Nice.
Frost? Trying to distract someone. That's right. Hey. Frost. So Brian Gardner has been. Is Frost just the theme, or is Frost the project that has been making the theme?
Frost is just an experimental full site editing theme, a block theme that we had started prior to joining WP Engine.
The theme itself.
Yeah, just a theme. Just a theme.
So
it's not just a theme. Come on, there's
it's
a lot
not
more
just
to
a
it.
theme.
It's an
now
experience.
Come on.
It slices, it
No,
dices, it
this
makes
is
chili
it, right?
and fries.
Your theme is your site, is your blog, is your posts, is your header. We are all one. Maybe
It's
this
your
is,
world. It's
maybe
your world.
full site editing is just us reaching like nirvana of like all oneness. Maybe that's the goal. Maybe that's what Matt's got up his sleeve.
I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but
Transcendent.
Wait,
You know what? I'm just gonna, for lack of a better leadership vision in WordPress, I'm just gonna go that it's transcendence.
It only took 4 minutes for Say to get existential.
yeah.
If he is leading us to all
3.5.
oneness, does that basically mean that the product direction is the back of the Dr. Bronner's bottle?
Yeah. Which is basically like all the documentation anyway. So
Sure.
it's the codex. The codex is actually, there's secrets in there. You have to go read it.
I like
And
this
you
metaphor.
slipped into the venting portion of the podcast.
So Steve's really into segues today, everyone. So he's just
Apparently.
you
may run off with one right in a minute.
Here's where we're
Every
at.
time there's a nice bridge, he's going to be like, well, that was pleasant. That was nice. That was good. I like that. That was good. All right.
So
Let's
we
talk
use
to
the
Nick.
word we use the word converting in this
Yes.
in this title of the
Yes.
show. Can you kind of set us up a little bit there, Say?
Yeah. So Nick wanted to talk about adoption, and I
That was thrown out.
Yeah, and we're like, whatever. No, I actually, we've talked. Adoption to me feels more like an acceptance. Like once you've adopted an idea or whatever it is, you're like, okay, I'm on board. I think that's the getting on board. Now, I will not say here publicly on this podcast whether or not I have adopted full-site editing.
She hasn't.
But if one were to,
Right.
hypothetically, then one would need to not just, think about full-site editing, but actually implement full-site editing.
Right.
And so I wanted to, while we have you here as a full site editor, I wanted to talk to you about that. The process itself of converting an existing WordPress site, see what I did there, to full site editing. Okay.
Yeah, no. I think the quickest answer to that is it's not easy. I think if you have an entire site built out, if you have an entire site built out with, custom plugins, widgets, ACF, WooCommerce, all the things that you might want in a traditional WordPress site, and you say, I'm going to take that and put it into full site editing, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. You're going to run into problems. It's not going to be smooth.
What?
Yeah. And I think that it's.
Have you attempted? Sorry, go ahead. What?
I just think it's important to say that straight out. Like, I'm the biggest advocate for full site editing. But if someone says, I have my great site, I really like it a lot, and I want to convert it to full site editing, I'd be the first person to say, are you sure you want to convert it? Like, are you sure? Because we're going to be building non-full site editing themes for a long time, forever maybe, Yeah. And it's just another way to build with WordPress. And I don't think that anybody has to be converting to full site editing if they're not ready for it or they don't want to. So
don't do it till you're ready, kids.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully.
No pressure here.
And I actually
don't come to peer pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a very if you like what you use, keep using it. If you
full site editing, wait, hold on, I have to keep going with this. Gutenberg is like the gateway drug to full site editing. It's like the block editor. It's like the gateway drug.
Sure. Yeah.
So the block editor is the marijuana of WordPress. I just had to take it all the way. All right, there we go. We just had to take it the whole time.
Yeah. And 7 minutes in, Say has talked about weed.
and it's 7 minutes and 3 seconds. Cosper has taken my role.
Hey, anyway, so Wikipedia defines full site editing as no. Okay, but okay, let's actually talk about this. So so there's no show topic because you say don't convert your site to full
That's
site.
not
I mean,
what he's
the paste
saying.
and copy and paste works really well with Gutenberg, so you can definitely paste.
We just gotta go.
Let's just say you've made the decision to go down this road.
Sure.
With converting. What's next?
So I think that if you are in if you're in the classic editor, you haven't even adopted the block editor.
Run. Do not do this.
Right, but I think that it's one of those things that let's talk about full site editing from a Wikipedia definition, right? From not WordPress. We got Wix and Squarespace, and it's something that maybe clients of agencies aren't looking for, but the general public, my mom uses Squarespace. People like being able to edit things visually, and so
it sounds like a your mama joke somehow.
Yeah,
on the show.
Your mom uses Wix.
Yeah, your mom's so lame.
She wears the headphones.
And so I think being able to edit things in a visual way over shortcodes. I have a plugin that has 20,000 active users that is a shortcode plugin to make columns, right? That user experience versus blocks is,
That's your plugin?
I don't even know what it's called anymore. It's
you made it?
Yeah. It's advanced column shortcode. I don't even know. I wrote it so long ago.
Right?
I wonder what that does.
Yeah. Is it well supported?
It just uses the classic editor. So it's just
let's let Nick finish. Nick's talking about the steps to converting it like this. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, yes.
So I think that if you're already using the block editor, you're pretty far along. And I think you got to start evaluating what is enabling full site editing doing for you. Are you an individual user? Are you just have your own personal site? Then I think the argument to adopt full site editing is much more relevant because instead of learning to code and changing your template files, you can just do it visually. But from an agency perspective, it's a much different thing, right? You, I'm sure, have all your processes in place about how you're interacting with clients, kind of what clients should have access to, what they shouldn't have access to.
They should have access to nothing. No, that's not true.
Exactly, and that's a very valid approach. In which case, full site editing stops making.
Nick, in either case, don't you kind of have to ask the question, how often is your site changing? Like, how often are those elements of your site changing?
100%. And there's a new. Sorry.
There's so many ways to create a WordPress install that doesn't even, you can skin your back end. Sorry, I've never said that out loud before. You can do an admin theme. You can do headless WordPress.
Yep.
You can do integrations. Like, for example, I've built some integrations that are from Airtable to WordPress, so completely circumventing the content editor at all. So they wouldn't even ever touch it. So full site editing in that case would be completely for me, the developer, and not even matter to my client.
100%.
So there's so many different ways to do that. I really like the idea that you're that you said that it's just one of the ways to use WordPress. And I think that is actually really important because for some reason, I think it's the big giant header that comes in every time we get a new WordPress that says, you can use full site editing now. I think that might be part of the problem, but because it's not true.
Is your header actually shouting at you?
Yeah, it's so loud. I'm like, go away. But anyway, thoughts gone now. You know where I was going. You get the gist. It's there.
No, but I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day who runs an agency entirely built off of Elementor, and and there's concern about, full site editing. What should I do about this? Are you happy using Elementor? Is it working for you? Great. Keep using it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to
I feel like you should give like life coach advice. You're like making me feel so calm right now. You're like, there's no pressure. It's just what's working for you. If it's working for you, do it more. If it doesn't work, you can change.
You've got to calm down the rhetoric about you have to convert to full site editing, like, because that's the first. It's like, it's cool. Like, if you approach it like, I'm going to explore this new way to build with WordPress, and you approach it from that perspective, it's neat because that like if you were to convert to adopt full site editing, you'd have to change your entire thought process and how you build sites for clients. Like, it would just be completely different.
Yeah, and they just introduced locking, which I love saying block locking because that is like block in the beat. Block in the beat. Every time.
Oh my God.
Block. That's what I think. I don't know the words to that song, but blah.
It's the block rockin' beats, but it sounds very similar.
Oh, thank you. Is that what? Thank you for clarifying that.
You asked what the words were.
I didn't realize that when I was making a parody.
You asked the words.
Well, before that, I wanted the words before block, and beat.
How much time are we going to spend on this one?
More than necessary, like usual.
Right.
Cosper, it looked like you had something you wanted to say. What was it?
Yeah. So actually, it's a question for you, Jason. So given what Nick has said, how do you feel about converting the WPwatercooler site to a block-based site?
So I'm glad we only have a couple of minutes remaining here. So like I was talking about earlier, the copy and paste in Gutenberg definitely works. And so if you copy and then paste, that works fine. I think the thing that
wait, on that note, this is cutting and pasting your site into conversion was what we all were like. Well, I specifically have slides that say this in my WordPress things. It's like, you don't have to cut and paste. You can just import and export your stuff. So I just feel let down by the idea that we are cutting and pasting. I feel regressed with that.
And the paste that I did was the paste special, so it doesn't actually copy over any of the styles or anything because it's just going to get it's just going to get gross. But I think when things that really get messed up is when you built some infrastructure behind a shortcode or or something like that to display one damn thing Like I'm just displaying one freaking word that I captured in ACF and I want to display it. And now I have to like build an entire block for it. I'm like, come on, dude. Like this is like, you got to give me shortcodes like ease in order to be able to kind of pull this stuff off. And no one's done that yet.
You could build shortcodes, right?
Shoot, you can still use shortcodes. You could literally type in /shortcode and use shortcode.
What was that now? Nick, you
can't. You can do that exactly, but one of the things where it gets tricky, and you can do this, but inline shortcodes work, but they look like crap because you have a visual editor, your visual experience, and now you got shortcodes through the whole thing. So there's been some talk about.
I hate this so much.
But there's been some talk about tokens.
It won't render the shortcodes in the visual editor, is what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Correct. Well, I mean, like, I don't actually know about Elementor, but Divi will. Like, Divi will show you when you're looking at the visual editor, the rendered shortcode. Sometimes
I've been leaning heavily on like Cadence blocks to do some of this stuff because Cadence Pro has its own thing of being able to display this sort of stuff. But it's just like we built a system to the point where Nick built columns out of shortcodes, and then we abandoned it entirely. And now we're like, everyone go use this. But we didn't give concessions to the folks that were still using these things that just like, I want to display a thing, one small little piece of text that I captured elsewhere. I mean, even if like, how would you do like, for instance, the copyright notice at the footer of the site? You had to make a block for copyright instead of just putting like a low bracket that says copyright and have it display it.
Yeah.
It's like stuff like that where it's just like, I had to build a whole block just to make this happen. And, don't even get me started on how many plugins you're going to end up installing because you just started randomly, willy-nilly installing blocks.
You're like, woo, woo, woo. It's like me and apps on my phone, though. I guess that's the future we're going to, is just download it and test it and like delete it when you run out of room or something at that point.
Yep.
So your website is your phone.
Exactly.
I wanted to talk about, if we could, the Superfly. What? Why did I say Superfly? The super rad, cool, awesome thing that is template parts.
Mm-hmm.
They're so fresh and so clean. What? That's it. That's all I have to say. I'm so mad that template parts are like in the visual, like in the editor, like, and that it makes it makes everything. Why? Okay. So from your earlier statement, right? The full site editing really is for users, right? We're trying to go towards. It's not necessarily for developers, it's for users. Okay, great. Template parts makes no sense to users. Like, the very least, we could call it a section or a reusable
area.
Reusable area. Like, reusable block makes sense. What is this? This is a block. Can you reuse it? Yeah, it says reusable block. Template part. Like, everyone knows, no one even knows the difference between, I always had to explain the difference between a theme and a template, right? Like, we're getting into semantics here, and then you have a theme and a template part inside your template.
Well, I do think that full site editing, because you're taking content that was never available to users before. They never had templates directly editable. They're all PHP and template parts. All this stuff was hidden in the theme files.
I mean, that's not actually true, because there's always the page attributes that have templates there, whether or not the theme that most people are using utilized page templates.
Sure.
That has been there and has been part of the experience.
But not everything, like archive templates, search templates, all the templates that you might have.
Right.
So I think that when it comes to, I do a lot of, workshops and social learning stuff. And I think that educating people on just template hierarchy, just I
love that old graphic. That was my favorite graphic back in the day.
All that stuff, it's because you go into the site editor, you click that button and you see every template, and then you have all these template parts, and it's overwhelming for folks.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
But I do think, though, that it's something that's overcomeable. I think that naming could be different, but I think that we're operating from a perspective where users had no access to that directly, other than the pick from your 3 different template page templates that you're theming to everything. It's definitely like People need to learn how they work, how they're used. And I think that most users of a WordPress site will never see that. It's only the people who have admin access who are actually working within the site editor. So I don't know. I'm optimistic that people can learn, but I get your point though, that it's a whole new level of like working with WordPress that people never really interacted with before. And it can be very
not the way that Squarespace or Wix are doing it. I mean, at the very least, like they're focusing, if we're gonna, this is just, I feel like that if we're gonna focus on the user, then the user interface is kind of essential to that. And making it not like, I feel like we're like, oh, we can educate people and we can teach people. Yes, we can. But also we could just change the name and name it something that people already, are comfortable using. Because that's not, it's not called, it doesn't look as developer-y when you're using Squarespace or Wix. It looks more like the block editor. And I've actually talked about this on the show before, but the block editors drag and droppedness, and it just has so much, it has that vibe, that feel to it, that the full site editor does not, like literally in terms of user layout. So I guess I'm just kind of going back to that, who's it for, because you were like, it's for the user, and I have the song from Beck in my head, keep going like, I'm a user baby, but that's why I keep bringing it up. But do you feel that the full site editor, not the block editor and its UI, but the full site editor, what is the evolution of that in terms of user interface in your, like, where is it going?
So I think that we also need to define like what a user is, right? Like a WordPress user, I think, is going to change. I did a session the other day where I built an entire WordPress theme without touching any code. Now, it's not the most advanced theme in the world, but it's didn't touch a line of code. And I think that the user of WordPress will naturally change as this functionality becomes more UI based as opposed to code based. And so I do think that by providing people with all this functionality, which may be confusing and overwhelming and whatnot, in a UI, I think has interesting implications down the line for who might want to use WordPress. You might be a designer, don't know how to code, but you could hop in there, learn the UI, much like you learn Photoshop or something, build out your entire design, export your theme without touching a line of code. And I personally find that kind of interesting. But to your point about like, what is the evolution of the full site editor? I mean, it needs to be better. It needs to be more intuitive. It needs to have more functionality. We were talking about custom post types today. And if you have like an archive template for a custom post type, you can put that into your theme and it will come into the site editor, but you can't add it directly without actually messing with theme files. That kind of limitation and functionality is over. I learned how to do a template file and okay, I understand this. Wait, how do I do this? Right. And you can't do it. Yeah, exactly. So
you didn't know.
And then you take somebody who's learned how to do this stuff without code. Now it's like, we got you all ramped up to do it without code and you're doing great. And then you run into these hurdles and then now you're back into editing theme files. So I do think that's, to your point about who's this for, it's a tricky question, right? Like for me, maybe I'm the only one. Like,
it's supposed to be for people that use WordPress. That's the thing.
It's for the designer that also knows code. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's for the designer that is like totally fluent in CSS, because like I haven't seen anything in terms of anything that is that you actually allows you to really make cosmetic changes other than like font sizes. Like, I mean, there are blocks and such that do that, but is that, I feel like you still have to use CSS.
I mean,
but because the tools are so limited within the editor, you just can't do the things you want to do.
Well, I built an entire theme. It's not the most beautiful theme, but I took 2022, which is it's the hatchery green theme, and I just completely changed color palette, font, like everything in it. I mean, again, I'm not a designer, so but I mean, it is.
Is that available? Can we look at it on the? Can you put it up or send?
I have the video recording of it.
Send Jason the link. I want to see it. your theme.
We're probably going to
so-
run out of time before we get to all of that, but yeah,
So we can put it in the show notes. But
definitely.
So to back to our actual title. So besides, we ended up talking about it emotionally, kind of again, probably my fault. But in terms of actually converting, let's say you have a simpler site, not something that's like, you know, got a lot of custom stuff going on, but just something that's simpler, you know, and maybe it has an integration or two with, you know, like Open Table or something because it's for a restaurant or whatever. Sure. So like, what would you just recommend? You just sit there, you just switch your theme and hit activate and then like, you know, go? Or because you can't test it, right? You can't test the theme. You have to have a staging site. Another reason why I'm like, this is not really like a general user, but
that's kind of true with any theme change, right?
No, I mean, you can do live preview to a certain degree. I mean, not really, but like at least you can sort of see it. But anyway, so let's say you're ready to do it and you don't have a staging site. It's actually hard for me to say that, to be like, just hit activate. And I feel like without a staging site, I was like, I can't even say that out loud.
The first 10 years of WordPress, that is exactly how most people who ran a blog, specifically I'm saying a blog, ran things. They were like, oh, here's a new theme. It looks cool. I'm just going to go ahead and hit activate.
Install and activate. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's so funny because that's, you know, that used to be the way. And now it's like, you know, without a child theme and without a staging site, I'm like, oh, don't do that. You know, you don't want to mess anything up. But again, I'm really just trying to, I have a lot of blocks to this, as you can tell, but I'm really trying to say, so like when you do that conversion, are there any tools? Are there any things that you've seen that come up regularly that people would want to check, or, you know?
If you have a basic blog, right, and and you want to change your theme or basic site, and you find a block theme that you like, say 2022 or whatever it might be, installing that theme and activating the main things, you're not going to have widgets, you know, because there's no widget areas in a block theme. So that's something to watch out for. But assuming you like the layout of the theme and you've chosen that because you like how it's laid out, the only thing to me that you really need to watch out for, and it's just opening up the site editor and making sure it's navigation, making sure your navigation menus are appearing correctly. But I mean, like taking the 2022 theme, it's going to pull in your site logo, it's going to pull in your site title, pull in your posts and all the templates. It's really just making sure that the navigation is pulling in correctly, because I think navigation is one of the biggest hurdles in a block theme, and it's still being worked on. That UI around navigation is really tough.
Yeah, I've heard, I think, was it Carolina, who was on our show a couple weeks ago, was talking about how narrow the shallow, I guess, the
like a mini map
is, and it's like literally visually difficult to manage.
It's very hard. It's very hard. And so like navigation, if I could just put that over here, like that's probably the biggest.
Don't worry about the navigation. It's not an important part of a website.
It's minor.
No big deal.
And everything should render, because they'll be stuck in classic blocks and it should still all render. But I mean, if you have some advanced implementations, you know, WooCommerce, I know they're doing a lot with WooCommerce to improve on blocks and all that kind of stuff.
Have you converted, or have you heard of anyone converting an existing, and it could even be, they could have Gutenberg and blocks and all that, but converting an e-commerce activated WooCommerce site over to?
I am not a WooCommerce person, so
have you heard any rumors?
No, I have not.
No one's talking about it.
And I think a lot of it has to do with WooCommerce updating their entire block architecture.
Yeah, please don't.
He's actually working on one right now over his
lunch. A little something to do with that.
For those of you who are listening and not watching, I've been shaking my head for about the past 30 seconds. Please don't do that.
I mean, just check out, Steve. It's not like you have to check out to use one of these websites. I mean, you don't have to put things in a shopping cart.
Here's all I'm getting at, and I've said this before on the water cooler, and I'm going to say it again. If your site is mission critical, if your site is your business, do this on a staging server.
Please, God, please do. I think it's so funny. I swear, I like start all our full site editing episodes and I'm like, yes, we're going to talk about how cool it is. And we're going to talk about how there's future. And I ask these questions. I'm like, tell me about all the cool stuff. And literally everyone's like, so you just got to be really careful. Yeah. And it'll get really cool. Good soon. And in 2024, it's going to be awesome.
Everything's cool. What?
Yeah. This is what I'm saying. Like, I don't understand. Why can't we just work on something, work on full site editing, and not have it have to take over everything at the same time? Like, have it be there and in development. We left Gutenberg in a plugin forever. Like, I do not understand this process. And I think that is what I keep getting hung up on is the
Yeah, look at the time. I do want to say that that a future topic, we do need to discuss what is the future of staging sites for something like this. Because we've talked about it and we've glossed over it so many times on multiple episodes now. And there has to be a good solution for this. And I don't think we have it yet. So
let's talk. There are some commercial solutions to staging sites too. So Nick, if you have more to say, you are welcome to come back on. Sorry, this is a big topic. We can't ever get. We can't.
I will talk about full site editing until the day I die. So if you guys want to hear me more,
that's extreme.
I will.
I mean, we said that about
that is a bold statement.
We said that about tiny MCE, and look where we're at now, right?
Hey, I'm pretty sure that the block editor is built off tiny MCE in the back.
So you have a tattoo that says tiny MCE that's crossed out, strike through, and then it's got FSE right under it. Is that with a heart? Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to y'all later. See you. Go over to WPwatercooler.com/subscribe to learn how to subscribe to this content. We would appreciate that. Go over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and you go watch us over on
anywhere else.
YouTube.
YouTube?
You have a good one.
What's YouTube?